Hey there YouTube, I wanted to make a quick video about a project I'm working on. I bought this, it's a 2004 Impreza from my roommate who got a new car. This car needed a clutch and it had an engine knock. So I actually found a 2010 Subaru Forester engine in the local Craigslist and went and picked it up. I had heard from people that it would work. The major difference with that engine is that it has variable valve timing, and so my thought was just to use the cylinder heads off of the 2004 Impreza motor, the EJ, I think it's 251, and I think so. The thing is, you can't use the cylinder heads from the 2004 engine because with the variable valve timing motor, at least in the 2010 Forester, you have these domed pistons, and so they would have hit the valves in the cylinder head for this car. Here they are. These are the cylinder heads for it. So you can see we got this rocker on the intake valve here. Really, there's only a couple things that you need to do if you're using a 2010 motor. One of them is this crossover pipe's different. You can see here, I've already switched this onto this motor. This coolant temp sensor, or whatever this coolant sensor is, comes out the back on the 2004. And so I need that for the harness. You can see it comes out the front on the 2010 crossover pipe. The other thing is all the timing belt's the exact same, all the pulleys are the same, the cam gears are the same. The water pump works, so I used, on the 2010 it came like forward, so you just need to switch out the water pump for this motor. Okay, so now we have this thing upside down. You do need to switch the oil pan because because the 2010 one is kind of like comes down flat here. Let me see if I can find it. This is it here. So you can see how it's got this shape where in the back it's just flat. And this one's tapered. It's got this shape like this right here. So that's important because the cross member, this is dark in here, but it wouldn't clear this cross member in the 2004. So I did need to switch the oil pan over just so I could clear the cross member here. Now, when you take off the 2010 oil pump, there's a couple things you need to do. You will see where the oil pickup is inside. This is already on here now, but where the oil pickup is, you'll need to drill and tap 2 holes so that you can screw so that you can thread in 2 bolts to hold that oil pickup in place. Which isn't too bad. I just used the 2 bolts from the 2004 motor, which were M6 by 1.0, so I just bought that tap. That was pretty quick. And the other thing is, on the 2004 it uses all small bolts like this. On the 2010, you got 1, 2, 3 larger bolts. These have a 12mm head. I believe they're M8 instead of M6. That might not be right, but they're bigger. This is a 12mm head instead of the 10mm. And then you have to just drill out 1 hole in the oil pan to accommodate this one. So there's a little bit of changes you need to do with the oil pan and the oil pickup, but it's really not bad. There is one other thing I forgot to mention that you need to do, and that is there is this oil port. So that comes out, and you got to find something to plug this hole. Okay, so I found another couple things. If we're putting a 2010 engine in a 2004, there's a couple other things you got to do. There's like these protector things that sit over the fuel injectors. You got to take those off so that the intake manifold can sit down flush. There was a clearance here with the valve cover, with the valve cover. So I took those off. The other thing is, when I'm using the spark plug wires from the 2004, just because I never took it off the intake manifold, when I plug it in, you can see they're a little short, or they're a little long, so there's a gap. So I need to get the 2010 spark plug wires for this. What else? Well, whatever this is, I think this is a knock sensor, I can't remember, but that plug needs to be switched over to the 2004 one so that I can plug the harness in. Also, I need to steal this tube off because this one comes up, this one comes into the side. You can see, so and this one points down, so I need to switch that tube. So just little stuff, nothing major. So other thing here is, obviously I won't be able to run the variable valve timing with the 2004 harness and ECU. So what I've heard is that this motor works just the same. You're just not getting as much intake valve lift with this engine as you did with that one, because with the original EJ251 from the 2004, you have both intake valves opening at the same time and both exhaust valves opening. On this one, because you have this variable system here on the intake valve, one valve will always open, and then depending on your RPM and load, depending on your engine RPM and oil pressure, that second intake valve will open up. And you can see there's a little pin in here that will kind of slide in and lock this secondary intake valve in place. This motor's upside down right now, which is why intake is on the bottom. So that's the deal. This is also just for me because I may forget some of this stuff. It probably took another, I'm a slow mechanic, so it probably took me another hour or two for the oil pan to get that all right, and then switching over the coolant crossover pipe was really quick, maybe 10 minutes. And for me it was worth it because this engine I got for really cheap, for $200, and so sometimes you just work with what you get, and I'm curious to drive it to see if it is the same. I know that because this is a variable valve, variable timing on the intake, I might not have as much performance up at the top end, but it should be a little bit more fuel efficient in the lower RPMs, which is good because I really don't rev these Subarus that high. It's not like a Honda where I'm revving to 7 or 8 grand. These Subarus I usually shift before 4 grand. Unless I'm up in the mountains, I may take it to 5 or 6 grand, but that's very rare. So I'm actually excited to see if I get some fuel economy savings with the variable valve timing motor, just because that secondary intake valve's not opening all the time. So that's my rant for this morning. Hopefully it helps some people to know that you can use these newer variable valve timing engines in the older Subarus. You just need to switch over the oil pan and this crossover pipe. I'm going to use the intake manifold, obviously, from the 2004 on this engine. Yes.